Good day to you, my dear students. I'm Shan Sibia Alpilita for the next topic on Jose Rizal, and it is the El Filibusterismo. So let's take a closer look. Learning objectives. At the end of this chapter, the student should be able to trace the meaning of the term filibustero across time. Number 2 is to explain the historical context in which the El Filibusterismo was written. Number 3 is to examine the current events through the eyes of the characters. Number 4, to evaluate Rizal as a novelist. Then, to discuss the summary and the important themes in the El Filibusterismo, to explain why knowledge of history is important in reading the historical novel. And lastly, is to examine the conditions of the Philippine society through reading Jose Rizal's The El Filibusterismo. For the vocabulary, the word filibustero in the 19th century context is translated as a subversive, a patriot who was usually associated with revolutionary activities. Guardia Civil is referring to the police, military force assigned by the colonial government to maintain peace and order. Cabeza de Barangay is considered to be as the head of the barangay, in which today it's considered to be the barangay captain or the barangay chairman in the context of the present times today. Another one is the reform, the improvement or change to a better state, economic, social, and political institutions. Revolution is referring to the violent attempt to overthrow a government. And lastly, Principalia is the ruling and usually educated upper class in the 19th century Philippines. Filibustero, History and Context. Rizal started writing the El Filibusterismo as a sequel to the Noli Me Tangere. After he returned to Europe on February 1888, the novel therefore was written in the midst of threats and oppressions he and his family were experiencing because of the Noli and also the Calamba incident. Rizal continued working on his novel and made some revisions while he was in London in 1888. He was able to complete the novel after 3 years when he was in Biarritz, France, on March 29, 1891. However, because of financial constraints, it was not until September of the same year that the book was published with the help of his friend, Valentin Ventura. Okay, so in March 1887, after reading the Noli Me Tangere, Blumentritt asked Rizal the meaning of the word filibustero. So he did not find in the Spanish language. To recall, Rizal replied, "The word filibustero is still very known in the Philippines. The common people as yet do not know it. I heard it for the first time in 1872 when the tragic executions took place. I still remember the terror it aroused. Our father forbade us ever to utter it, as well as the words Cavite, Burgos, etc. The Manila newspapers and the Spaniards applied this word to one whom they wanted to render suspect of revolutionary activities. The educated far the reach of the word, it does not have the meaning of the freebooter. It rather means a dangerous patriot who will soon be hanged, or a presumptuous fellow." In 1890, Wences Lauritana wrote about the filibustero and described the term as the one who, eager for the independence of the country, resorts to various extra-legal proceedings in order to reach the objective that he pursues. By the end of the 19th century, the Spanish colonial government defined filibuster as someone who works for the separation of our overseas provinces. With these definitions, one will have an idea about the plot of Rizal's second novel. It deals with subversion, so it pictures the lives of the people under an oppressive regime. It narrates the struggles of every Filipino in fighting for independence. So the El Filibusterismo is dedicated particularly to the three priests who were executed in Luneta, or in formerly Bagumbayan, on February of 1872. The three priests were Padre Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora. In his dedication, Rizal expressed his high regard for the three priests who became victims of the evil that I'm trying to fight. So there's the memory of the in memoriam to the three priests, so executed on the scaffold at Bagumbayan. So the church, in refusing to degrade you, has placed in doubt the crime imputed to you. The government, in shrouding your cause with mystery and obscurities, creates belief in some error committed in critical moments, and the whole Philippines, in venerating your memory and calling you martyrs, in no way acknowledges your guilt. As long, therefore, as your participation in the Cavite uprising is not clearly shown, whether or not you are patriots, whether or not you nourish sentiments of justice and liberty, I have the right to dedicate my work to you as to victims of the evil that I am trying to fight. And while we wait for Spain to reinstate you and make herself jointly culpable for your death, let these pages serve as the belated wreath of dried leaves laid on your unknown graves, and may your blood be upon the hands of those who, without sufficient proof, assail your memory. Rizal, however, made mistakes in indicating the age of the three priests and the date they were executed. The Gombursa were publicly executed by Garrote on the early morning of February 17, 1872. Gomez at that time was 73 years old, Burgos was 35 years old, and Zamora was 37 years old at that time. In her translation of the novel, Soledad Lacson Luxin described the book based on the themes that can be seen in the story that the El Filibusterismo begins where the Noli Me Tangere leaves off, where love, romance, heroism, idealism, and tragedy turn to hate, bitterness, anger, disillusionment, and vengeance. Unlike Noli, El Fili burns with passion and ideology. So Rizal's biographers opined that the El Fili showed his maturity as a novelist. Okay, so let's go over now with the synopsis of the plot of the story. So, the story of the El Filibusterismo revolved around the main character, Simon, who was the rich jeweler, and Simon was actually Crisostomo Ibarra of the Noli, whom everyone thought was killed by the Guardia Civil at the Laguna de Bay 13 years ago. He was able to escape and fled to Cuba, and he became wealthy and was able to establish connections with the prominent Spanish officials. Upon his return to the Philippines, Simon became very influential, being the consultant of the Governor General. Okay, so from then on, Simon came back with his grand plan to exact revenge on the Spanish officials and also to rescue Maria Clara, who entered the convent after learning the news of Ibarra's death. He planned to launch a revolution, which he started to smuggle arms and recruiting followers mainly from the exploited and abused natives. One of his recruits was Basilio, the son of Sisa. With the help of Capitan Tiago, Basilio was able to study medicine in Manila. And Simon also began to establish an alliance with Cabezang Tales and his revolutionary group. So Cabezang Tales was a former cabeza de barangay who was maltreated by the friars. So using his position, Simon encouraged corruption and more oppressive government policies to enrage the people and thus provoke them to revolt. Okay, Simon's plans of revolution failed twice. In his first attempt, he decided not to give the signal for the outbreak of the uprising upon hearing the news of Maria Clara's death. Basilio and other students were then arrested for allegedly forming a seditious organization. However, Simon arranged the release of Basilio, who became bitter and vengeful. However, he was very grateful to Simon and offered his full support for the revolution. And then from this time, the second attempt at starting the revolution was also failed, no? Entailed the planning of the bomb at the wedding reception of Paulita Gomez and Juanito Pelaez. So the illustrious guests at the mansion, formerly the house of Capitan Tiago, no? Including Padre Salve and the Governor General. In Simon's plan, the revolution would be triggered by his gift to the couple. So it's a kerosene lamp with containing the nitroglycerin inside, which is one of the major ingredients for making a dynamite. When the lamp starts flickering and someone turns the wick, there would be an explosion, signaling the revolutionaries to attack all government buildings in Manila. As planned, Simon gave the lamp during the reception. Before leaving the venue, he left a note with a message, "You will die tonight," signed by Crisostomo Ibarra. Meanwhile, when Basilio saw all the people at the venue, his conscience bothered him. So he saw his friend Isagani, who was secretly watching his love Paulita celebrating her wedding. Basilio told Isagani about the explosive and asked him to leave the place. When Padre Salve confirmed Ibarra's handwriting, the guests began to panic and the lamp flickered, and Padre Irene tried to turn the wick, but Isagani, wanting to save Paulita Gomez, ran into the house, grabbed the lamp, and threw it into the river where it exploded. So Simon took the refuge in the house of the kind Filipino priest, Padre Florentino. The Guardias Civiles, however, learned about the whereabouts of the fugitive and informed the priest that they would come in the evening to arrest Simon. Instead of surrendering to the authorities, Simon poisoned himself. As the poison started to take effect on his body, he confessed to Padre Florentino his true identity and his plans for revenge. After the long, tedious confession, the priest told Simon that his plans might have failed because of the unjust means that were used. He assured Simon that there was still hope for the freedom of the country. And the story ended with Padre Florentino throwing Simon's jewels into the sea so that they would not be used by the greedy. He also prayed that when the right time comes, the treasure would be recovered and used for a noble purpose. As with the Noli Me Tangere, Rizal's main objective in writing El Filibusterismo is to expose the Philippine situation as he witnessed during his time. In reading his novel, one can see the nation's past and present situations, which make his literary work enduring significant. No? So Renato Constantino wrote about the relevance of Rizal's teachings, where he said, the importance of Rizal's ideas for our generation has a twofold basis. First, the applicability to the present-day problems, and the second, their inspirational value. So Rizal holds a mirror to our faces, and we see ourselves, our vices, our defects, our meanness, because the conditions he describes are the very conditions we see around us, and the character he portrays are the people we continue to meet. We readily respond to his earnest desire for basic changes in our society and in ourselves. On one hand, holds a mirror to shame us, and the other points the way to our regeneration. Yet, the truth is that the mirror was not meant to reveal our image, but the image of the people and the society of Rizal's time. By going back to the themes that Rizal tackled in El Fili, one can see the importance of the novel at present. Themes are the main ideas that flow through the narrative, which can be used to evaluate Rizal's views and ideas on different social issues. Revolution as a means for social change or means of social change. In the novels, Simon is the filibustero who encourages the Principalia class to abuse the poor so that the latter would be driven to revolt against the government. His character may be interpreted as someone who represents the Filipino revolutionaries that supported the idea of the bloody revolution against the Spanish colonial government. Simon's death in the story made some readers conclude that Rizal was against the idea of revolution. Simon's failed uprisings in the narrative were interpreted as Rizal's abhorrence of violence and bloodshed. They failed to see that Rizal, together with other reformists like Marcelo H. del Pilar, regarded reform and assimilation as the first step towards Philippine independence. In his letter to Blumentritt on June 19, 1887, in his letter to Blumentritt on June 19, 1887, he said, "I assure you that I have no desire to take part in the conspiracies which seem to be very premature and risky. But if the government drives us to the brink, that is to say, when no other hope remains, but seek our destruction in war, when Filipinos would prefer to die rather than to endure their misery any longer, then I will also become a partisan of violent means. The choice of peace or destruction is in the hands of Spain, because it is a clear fact, known to all, that we are patient and peaceful, mild, unfeeling, etc. But everything ends in the life where there is nothing eternal in the world. That refers also to our impatience." Rizal's words in the aforementioned letter are significant because they prove that he was not against the idea of violence if necessary. Historian Ambeth Ocampo wrote, "Simon failed not because Rizal was against revolution, but because he reflected on the anger and bitterness in his heart following the agrarian dispute in Calamba, and realized that one must start with a good intention to succeed." On leadership and governance, the Elfilis message is very clear. The inept leaders, corrupt officials, and system of the government in the Philippines could lead to Spain's downfall. When Simon said, "What is a man to do when he denied justice? Take the law into his own hands, or wait for Spain to give him his rights?" He stressed that if the demands of the people would not be granted, they would be driven to oppose the system and organize movements to fight for their rights. Rizal himself was admired as a good leader. His colleagues in the propaganda movement respected him because he showed a kind of leadership that he was not motivated by personal interest. The call for good leadership could be gleaned from El Fili when he stressed the importance of national sentiment to guard the society against all kinds of injustices and oppression. Okay, from then on, Rizal condemned the friar-led officials for their greed, corruption, and exploitation of the natives. On the other hand, he also criticized his fellow Filipinos who did not respond to the challenges under the abusive leadership of the Spaniards. The character of Basilio, for example, who, despite the extreme sufferings he and his family experienced, did not support Simon's plan of overthrowing the government. He only joined the revolutionary group after being arrested and imprisoned, followed by the death of his sweetheart, Culi. There was also one character, Senor Pasta, who abandoned his noble ideas to serve only the interests of those who hired him. While Rizal exposed the injustices done by the colonial government, he also challenged the Filipinos to guard their rights as one of their main responsibilities. The good leadership and governance bring about social, economic, and political reforms in the country. All these can be achieved if the leaders have moral fiber and are ready to give up their personal interests for the welfare of their constituents. On education and language, at the time that Simon was planning to launch the revolution, students including Basilio were also fighting for the establishment of a school that would allow the natives to learn from the Spanish language. Simon strongly reacted against the project advocated by the students. For him, it would mean the death of the national identity and the institutionalization of the tyranny. In Chapter 6, Basilio, and Chapter 7, Simon, Simon expressed his disapproval of the students' program, convincing Basilio to join him in his plan of revolution instead. He questioned the students' advocacy and said, "Okay, so what will you be in the future? A people without character? A nation without liberty? Everything in you will be borrowed, even your very defects. You're asking to be Hispanized, and you do not blanch with shame when it is denied you, even if it is conceded. What would you want? What would you gain? At best, to become a country of pronouncements, a country of civil wars, a republic of the rapacious and the discontented, like some republics of South America? Why do you now come with your teaching of Spanish, a pretension that would be ridiculous were it not for its deplorable consequences? Do you wish to add another idiom to the more than 40 already spoken in the island so that you may understand each other each time less?" Still about the language issue, Simon added, "You allow yourselves to be misled by the big words and you never get to the bottom of the things to examine the effects of their ultimate manifestations. Spanish will never be the common language in the country. The people will never speak it because of the ideas of its mind and the sentiments of its heart are no words in that idiom. Each country has its own, as it has a manner of feeling. What will you gain with Spanish? Of you who speak it? To stamp out your originality, subordinate with your thoughts the other minds, and instead of making yourselves free, make yourselves truly slaves? 9 out of 10 of those among you who presume to be enlightened are the renegades of your motherland. Those among you who speak that language are indifferent to their own tongue, so much so that they neither write nor understand it. How many have I seen who pretend not to know a single word of it?" Tilio, on the other hand, believed that through the education he would still be able to alleviate the lives of the fellow Filipinos. He did not believe that revolution could be an effective means to achieve freedom. For him, education and science would save the country from its present situation. Okay, on the Filipino youth. Where are the youth who will consecrate their golden hours, their illusions, and their enthusiasm for the welfare of the country? Where are they who would generously shed their blood to wash away so much shame, so much crime, so much abomination? Pure and spotless, the victim has to be for the Holocaust to be acceptable. Where are you, youth, who will incarnate in yourselves the vigor of life that has fled from our veins, the purity of ideas that have been soiled in our minds, and the fire of enthusiasm that has been extinguished in our hearts? We wait for you, O youth. Come, for we await you." Such were the words of Rizal through the character of Padre Florentino, a patriotic Filipino priest in the El Filibusterismo. Rizal saw the youth as the future of the country, because of this generation would one day lead the nation. Their actions today would shape the path of tomorrow. Rizal stressed the important role of the youth in challenging the government is as seen in the efforts of students like Basilio and Isagani to organize themselves and unite to call for reforms. For Simon, it was a way of embracing the Hispanization of the country. On the other hand, it could also be seen as Rizal's way of showing what the youth could do if they wanted reforms from the government. Okay, so that's all for this chapter on the El Filibusterismo, and stay tuned for the next topic of um, Jose Rizal's about the Philippines a century hence, the vision of Rizal's for the envision of Rizal's Philippines for the future, as well as the trial and the execution of Jose Rizal. So that's all. So once again, I'm Sean Xavier Alcalita. Thank you very much.